So, this is going to be one quiet podcast. We're starting this one without any idea what we're going to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, well, that's not entirely true. Got one idea. So,
I just ruined that. Because I was so loud. There we go. We're about equal now.
are we?
Yeah. Okay, let's try this again. So, Trump is getting impeached.
Well, possibly. He's currently on trial. The Senate is going through its Senate trial. We are recording this on Saturday, January 25th. Is that right?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's 25th.
I guess. Yeah, it's, man. So I've, since I don't have to work, I don't have to leave my house, I've been watching the entire thing pretty closely. I've seen all of the, amendment. I watched the amendment one. I stopped after a few amendments because it was obvious none of them were going to get through. So I watched the first three, which was split. Amendments to the Senate, the resolution for the Senate rules during the trial, right? The trial rules. They were trying to amend the resolution that Mitch McConnell put forth. Every single amendment that the Democratic minority leader put through, every single one. Josh, if you're gonna do it, just okay.
I'm trying to be quiet on it.
Yeah, I don't think that's gonna work. I think the mic's gonna pick it up anyway. Every amendment that they put through, the Republicans denied. 53 to 47. That is the party line. 47 Democrats voted against it, or voted for the amendments. 53 Republicans voted against the amendments. 53 out of 53, 47 out of 47. No discrepancies.
That just seems like they just vote for the party on that.
Yeah. But, it's not that witnesses aren't gonna happen. Like, it's not that there's a guarantee there won't be witnesses without the amendments, and it's not that there's a guarantee there won't be documents without the amendments. All of the documents and testimony that the House has did get put through with a change that McConnell made to it based off of what his own party was telling him to change. So Mitch McConnell changed when Republican senators were like, no, we need to change these two things, which was the length of time. 24 hours over 2 days was changed to 24 hours over 3 days for each side, both prosecution and defense. And the, what did I just say earlier? I forgot. Forgot where I was going. Forgot what I was saying with that. But so far, the defense, or the prosecution, has given their 3 days, their almost 24 hours of testimony. I don't think they used the full 24 hours. They got close, though. They were clearly laying out evidence, testimony, emails, text messages, testimony from ambassadors and security advisors or national security advisors, whatnot, to the president. People in the White House, people directly acting on the president's orders. They were laying out the facts as they were, that everyone involved in the phone call with the Ukraine, right? Everyone involved knew about the quid pro quo, right? It very clearly happened. Trump was negotiating the investigations. He was withholding the aid, and later withholding the White House meeting. Both of those things were required. Like, if Zelensky wanted those. That's the Ukraine president, right? Zelensky, Volodymyr Zelensky. If he wanted the White House meeting and Ukraine wanted the aid, they had to do the investigations into Biden. They didn't have to do the investigations. They had to publicly announce investigations into the Bidens. And it was very clear that Ukraine did not want to do that. They did not want to make that public announcement. But before the July 25th phone call, Ambassador Sondland was getting information from Trump and from Mick Mulvaney, who is directly in contact with Trump. So Sondland was getting information from both of those as what to advise Zelensky. And then the ambassadors on Zelensky's side, on the Ukraine side, they were talking to each other. Zelensky knew before going into the phone call that he had to promise an investigation.
And it seems like a plot of a B-list movie Hollywood is trying to get out.
The testimony is there, right? And before that call, the White House has national security talking points, right? Mm-hmm. Has talking points for every call with heads of state, right? With Donald Trump, the president, to the president of another country. So president of the United States speaks to the president of Ukraine. His national security advisors create talking points for him. Investigations into the Bidens were not one of those talking points. As a matter of fact, not only were they not one of the talking points, he didn't mention any of the approved talking points. Not a single one of the approved talking points from his own national security advisors he neglected. I mean, today was the first day of the defense, President's Council, making their arguments. They only did
Saturday?
Yeah, they only did 3 hours today. They didn't make full arguments today.
Okay.
They laid out their plan for what's going to happen on Monday and Tuesday, I believe. And they already said they don't think they're going to use the full 24 hours. They said they don't think they'll need it. After that, you get 2 days of questioning from the senators, and then votes to determine whether or not more witnesses are necessary and whether or not more documents are necessary. And then, depending on what happens there, voting to impeach and, conclusion of the trial. But the President's Council, as much as I don't like to admit, didn't do a terrible job today. I can see how a lot of people would look at what they did today and be like, okay, all of this makes perfect sense. And in reality, what they did today, they didn't necessarily outline any of the president's conduct or how it's not impeachable. Or I guess kind of they did. They were using the House of the facts and information gathered in the impeachment inquiry. They were using all of that evidence. They didn't present any of their own new evidence. They didn't present new facts. They didn't present new evidence. But they made the entire day to highlight what the prosecution side neglected to tell us. Because there are some things that they left out. They just didn't think were important, whatnot. Obviously, prosecution's not going to give arguments for the defense.
No.
So, it's like, so when they go and say that, well, why didn't they tell us this information? Because it's not their job to defend the president. Or they think their case is compelling, so they're going to present the prosecutorial evidence, right? And they gave all the evidence. All of the evidence is available for President's Council to use to defend. Course. And so that's what they did today. They used, like, for example, Volker testified that there was nothing wrong with what Trump did. There were a few other instances where, they're arguing that this stuff didn't happen in a vacuum and that Trump didn't have negative reasons. They're trying to argue that it wasn't necessarily based off of investigations into the Bidens when it clearly was. I mean, they also stated that one of the main arguments for the Democratic side, right, was that the White House meeting was held. Still to this day, Zelensky has not gotten the White House meeting. He has not stepped foot in the White House and had his meeting with President Trump, which would be a show of strength to Russia, right? That would be us backing our ally, and it would be reinforcing our relationship, and it would be harder on Russia. Harder for Russia to infect Ukraine and corruptly do whatever with Ukraine. But the President Council is saying it wasn't based off of a White House meeting. It was based off of a head of state meeting. As long as they met, it didn't necessarily matter that it happened in the White House. Because Zelensky himself said, hey, we don't necessarily have to meet in the White House. Can we meet at whatever date? I forgot exactly where they said. I didn't write it down. I didn't take the note. They had a meeting set for a conference. There was going to be an international conference, and Zelensky and Trump had a meeting set to meet and talk there. Trump couldn't go to that because of the hurricane happening here in the U.S. There was the emergency with the hurricane, so he couldn't make it to that meeting. So that was one of their main talking points today, is the prosecution, the House Democrats, aren't putting forward, like, they didn't put forth all of the information.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is they're still doing the exact same defense as, okay, we're being picked on, and why do you say this over here? Why do you tell us about that? And that could be them talking about oranges while we're talking about apples. It's to redirect all of us to think, oh, there's something else going on.
Yeah, but
why they're not really pushing their case forward. They're just sitting there. It's kind of like the few days before where they kept coming out and they kept saying they haven't presented any new evidence.
Yeah.
And both sides were saying it, but only one side was not presenting it.
No. Both sides weren't saying they're not presenting new evidence. You know, the Republicans were saying, these guys haven't brought in any new evidence. And the House Democrats, yes, they were repeating themselves because they were repeatedly looking at the same timeline. It all happened within the same timeline, so they're going to have to revisit events, right?
Yeah.
Do I think they had to replay the clips as much as they did? Probably not, but it certainly helped.
It probably was a strategy.
It was definitely a strategy to reinforce the facts that they had laid out. So I understand why it seemed repetitive, but saying they didn't have any new information is bogus, because their only job was to present the information that they had gathered, and that's exactly what they did. They presented the information that they gathered on day one. Day two, you got a little extra information on that tied into day one. Day three, you got even more information that tied in. It all there was new information. So, but I can get why, or at least how some people can look at the defense's counsel or the defense's argument and say, this argument, look, yeah, and then just agree with it, because it's very easy to agree with. But they're not arguing on behalf of the president's conduct. They're not arguing that he is acting in, national interest. I mean, they kind of are, but it's vague and it doesn't have as much supporting evidence as the other side has. Then again, we've only seen 3 hours from them, so they could provide more. It looks like they're going to put up a strong fight. It's obviously they're not going to just sit back and be like, well, we don't need to do anything because he's not getting impeached, because it's very likely he won't be impeached. I mean, in reality, only 4 Republicans need to change their vote to the side of the Democrats, and they will have the simple majority vote to get more witnesses and testimony. And then once those 4, it's like, I think you need a 2/3 to actually impeach and convict the president. I think. I'm not 100%. But they only need a few Republican senators to get it started with the extra witnesses and documents. But in reality, the chance of enough Republican senators coming through and actually impeaching Donald Trump, is that very likely?
Well,
probably not.
Here's one to think about. We can see who votes for what, right?
Yeah, we can see it all.
They are now trying to vote out one of the richest people, one of the most bankrupt person. I mean, richest. Okay, as a person that has a lot of power. Let's just agree with that.
He's definitely a powerful person. Whether or not
even when he gets impeached, he will have a lot of power.
Yep.
Even if he doesn't get reelected, he still will have a lot of power.
Yes.
And maybe they're all fearing if people see, hey, you try to impeach our president, they might be like, ruin their career right there, doing what they should do. Mm-hmm. Because there's people's careers got ruined for didn't even know what they were doing wrong.
And I think everyone agrees, even the people on the Democratic side, that the Republican senators could, if they do decide to impeach Trump, if they decide to go against Trump and the rest of the Republican Party, it could very much mean the end of their Republican career. Like, it could very much be a divisive decision where the Trump supporters that were supporting them turn their backs on them and vote for somebody else. So it's entirely plausible that their careers could be in jeopardy if they vote, in my opinion, vote correctly. As I think on at the end of day 2 and the end of day 3, I think Adam Schiff gave a very strong argument, especially at the end of day 2. Is essentially his last half hour of argument was, can you trust the president? And the answer that everyone knows is no, you can't trust the president. Can you trust that he will put the nation's interest above his own? And he just very blatantly said, no, you can't. He will act out of his self-interest every time. Every time. And, I think it's hard. It's got to be a difficult challenge for those Republican senators to sit there and listen to Schiff say that and think he's wrong. It's like everyone knows Trump will do what's right for Trump.
Well, I mean, there's many reasons why they will vote for Trump on that. One, like we just talked about, they'll lose their position. 2, they'll lose any support from anywhere because they want to be that party. Yeah. And once they start voting against the president,
then you have the argument that ties into that is Trump chose. He actively made a choice. Even if you don't think what he did with the Ukraine was wrong, he made an active choice to essentially...
He bribed another country.
A lot of what he's doing as president is not going through his council as president, his national security advisors. He's ignoring them. He doesn't trust them. He's not going through official channels to do the things that he's doing. Instead, he sends his personal lawyer, and Rudy Giuliani.
Think about how many lawyers does that guy have to have?
Speak to Giuliani. Yeah, speak to Mick Mulvaney. Speak to Giuliani. Giuliani shouldn't be involved in presidential matters. In official White House matters, Giuliani should not be the middleman. He's not a good human being. He's not on White House staff. He is personal lawyer to the president. And so when Zelensky is trying to talk and is trying to get, things from the U.S. that he desperately needs to fight Russia because Russia is invading, he's trying to get this aid. He's trying to get this meeting to get support from the United States. He has all this stuff that he has to do for his country. And Trump is like, okay, work it out with Rudy Giuliani. Why Rudy Giuliani? Why?
Probably because he has more mindset of what's really going on. Yeah. Trump, I bet you can stand next to Trump and say, you make $1 million more doing this, and he'll go and do that without fully understanding anything.
I think that's it too. I think Trump just trusts him too much. He thinks Giuliani is. I don't know. They're probably both benefiting from their relationship, right? Like Trump, I don't know necessarily that Trump is benefiting from it, but he seems to believe he is. But, the argument is that if the President of the United States has his own national security advisors, his own intelligence agencies are telling him one story. Russia hacked the 2016 election, Ukraine did not. And he says, okay, but Vladimir Putin just told me that the Ukraine hacked the elections. So then he believes this story from the Ukraine that the crowd strikes or story or whatever, that the Ukraine hacked the election. So now so he's believing Giuliani over his own national security advisors, over his own intelligence agencies, the CIA, the FBI, everyone the Department of Defense, the entire system.
But here's the problem. We got more than one scenario. Okay, Trump. A, he knows what happened fully. And he's just trying to point it out somewhere else. So throw people off track. B, he doesn't know what's happened. And he's a pawn. Or C, he's just a total idiot.
A blumbering idiot, yeah.
And he kind of knows what's happened. But he doesn't.
I don't think he's a complete idiot. I think he doesn't know how to make good decisions. I think he's proven that in his past. He's proving it now. And if you can't trust the president to make the decision to listen to his counsel, his White House counsel, if you can't trust him to listen to his advisors, can you trust him with anything regarding national security? And Schiff's argument is no, you can't. We cannot trust this president to do what is right for the nation.
He attacked a foreign nation without approval.
Yep.
He attacked.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. He attacked.
Well, he didn't. Yeah. He attacked State General, the second highest ranking member of the Iranian military, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. In the missile attack. So yeah, and that was determined. That's not allowed. I mean, even President's counsel is arguing that nothing illegal happened. Right? He didn't commit a crime.
It's against the Constitution.
He absolutely not regarding the Iranian thing, not regarding the bombing, regarding the phone call, and they're saying that President Trump or obstruction of Congress. They're saying he didn't commit a crime at all. But not enforcing or withholding foreign aid that has been approved by Congress is a crime. A law, the bill was passed in, I think, 2002, 2003, some early 2000s. A bill was passed, or something was passed. Congress has entire authority over financial matters regarding foreign affairs. Anything U.S. money coming out of the U.S. budget has to go through Congress. If Congress approves it, the president cannot withhold it. The president has no control over the aid going. He can. I think if there are truly matters of national security regarding the aid. Like the aid was going to go to people and some new intelligence came out that money was going to go to terrorists or go to something. If it came out that money was going to go someplace that we didn't want it to go, or that aid was going to somehow go somewhere we didn't want it to go, he could put a hold on it and then put the information through the proper channels and send it to Congress and say, hey, this is why. Please, this is,
But that's not the whole point of what he did.
He has to go through the official channels. Trump refuses to go through official channels. He doesn't go through official channels with 90% of the shit that he does.
Oh, yeah. But, I mean, what he did by withholding that aid until something happened, he bribed a country.
Yes. Extorted a country. I think it's more extortion than bribery, isn't it?
Well, both.
I'm not 100%, but...
Both. I just passed Dalton to my cell phone with the laws that a president can issue war.
War. He cannot declare war. He cannot commit acts that would be perceived as acts of war. Right? It is Congress's duty.
Okay, let me just read it. President's power to commit the United States to an armed conflict without the consent of the U.S. Congress. That is the War Power Resolution. Let me actually... I'll let you continue to talk while I read more on this.
Sure. Congress, we all know Congress has the right to declare war, right? Congress has the right to... Any act determined an act of war, an active attack on another state, essentially country. Like, not necessarily acts on... Like, for example, acts on terrorist cells within Iraq, within Pakistan, within the Middle East don't count because terrorist cells aren't part of the government, right? They're not.
Okay, so...
And also terrorist cells are...
He did support terrorists, but he was part of the government.
I'm not talking about the general.
Okay.
I'm talking about an isolated group that's not involved with the government. The president does not need any approval from Congress. He can act as he sees fit. The executive branch can act as they see fit. But the general that Trump attacked, who was a terrorist, also happened to be Iran's second in command.
Yes. Okay, well, here's the direct line I should have read. It provides that the president can send the U.S. armed forces into action abroad only by a declaration of war by Congress. Now, it also goes on. Or in a case of national emergency created by attack upon the United States, its territories, or
Imminent
possessions, or its armed forces.
Yeah.
Now, that general was not doing a direct attack or anything. I mean, the general probably should have died, no matter what. I'm not going to disagree with that, but that's just one of the things he has stepped over.
Yeah, and that's not even like really being brought up. I don't think I've heard it once in the.
But the impeachment's not over that.
Impeachment trial. It's not for that. It's not. It's there, and I don't understand the Democratic, what they passed through. There was a lot more that Trump has done that they could have involved with impeachment. They could have gone after several different crimes. No, like the argument that Trump hasn't committed any crimes is patently false. It's like Trump going on stage to say, I tell the truth. I don't lie. I don't ever lie. Trump, will actively say he doesn't lie. He said that on national TV I believe. He said he's committed to the truth. He does not lie.
But he doesn't.
There is a website.
The Truth Lies.
Yeah, that has tracked all of Trump's lies or mistruths or untrue statements within the last 3 years as president. He has over 16,000 confirmed public lies or myths, truths. 16,000 statements.
Wow.
That were determined to be lies by the people tracking how, they watch everything. Every public statement said by Trump is collected. It's visible. You can find it. I guarantee it. And these people are just watching it all and saying, okay, then tally. Or they, somebody has to be going through it and determining, well, that's clearly a lie.
But the people that support him are like, no, you misunderstood what he said, or he was joking, or you just are confused.
I don't think anyone's arguing that anymore. I think everyone's realized that those arguments don't work because he's not joking.
Well,
I think they've realized that they've just started outright supporting, because honestly, a lot of the Republican Party's arguments, even baser Republicans, just individual Republicans, not related to the government in any way, they're just Republicans. Their arguments come from Fox News. Their arguments come from the Republican senators that are spouting off this nonsense. Mm-hmm. So it's these arguments, Republican senators have refined their arguments over time. They haven't made them better. They're not compelling arguments. But they change because they know, if they just stick to, he's joking, obviously, eventually, if they just keep saying he's joking, everyone's going to realize he's not joking. And everyone knows he's not joking.
No.
Everyone can see his intentions. It's you can see his actions. You can see, you can be presented with what was in front of him at the time, what he had done in the past, what was all of the information Trump has, and then you can see the decision he makes, and it's pretty easy to connect the dots. That President Council is arguing, all of these people, the main source of credibility is probably from Ambassador Sondland, because he had, I think, the most direct contact with Trump, other than one of the other ones that I forget the name of. The current testimony, he probably had the most direct contact with Trump, from what I've seen, or at least that's what we've been shown so far. But he very much had to state that his presumption, the idea in his head that that the aid was being withheld because Zelensky needed to announce investigations was a presumption. He did not hear Trump say it. The words never actually left Trump's mouth. But does that really mean that it's untrue? No, a presumption doesn't mean it's untrue. If your manager says, hey, go, when somebody tells you something and leaves out information, somebody tells you to make sure he knows that he has, or make sure he knows about the investigation, get him working on the investigation, and all the while, the aid is being withheld. And Zelensky keeps asking about the aid. Hey, where's the aid? Hey, what's this? Hey, what's this? And the only thing that you're allowed to tell him is do the investigation. Gee, I wonder what's going on there. You know?
Yeah.
It's you don't have to hear the words come out of the president's mouth to know what's happening.
You're right. And here's a question. How long is this impeachment supposed to last?
It depends on whether or not they call witnesses and documents. The current schedule, right, is the first day was amendments being put forth by Schumer and the Democratic Minority Party so Mitch McConnell proposed his resolution for the Senate trial, which outlines the schedule and everything. The first day was the minority leader trying to make amendments. That ended. The next 3 days are for prosecution. They get 24 hours within those 3 days. The next 3 days are for defense, President's Counsel. They get 24 hours within 3 days. And then there are 16 hours across 2 days, I believe, for questions from the senators, so that any senators get to ask questions. And then the next day, I believe, is arguments for whether or not witnesses should be allowed, voting for whether or not further witnesses are needed, further documents are needed.
Does Trump ever take the stand on this?
Well, no. Trump has said on the news, he said, I'd love to be on stand, and his own lawyers advised against that. Said, no, we're not putting you anywhere near this stand.
Well, I'm pretty sure I was talking to someone and they agree. They vote for Trump, but they agree Donald Trump needs to shut his damn mouth.
Yeah, absolutely. I think everyone that sees Trump understands Trump needs to stop talking sometimes. Yeah. He genuinely, I genuinely believe he wouldn't be as hated as he is if he wasn't on Twitter all the time. If he wasn't constantly announcing everything he did, people would miss some things.
Oh,
People would miss a lot, and then he wouldn't have as much hate. But that doesn't necessarily mean that he should remain president just because he's still a bad president.
How many people do you think actually sit and watch what you watch online?
I don't know. I mean, enough people. I've watched, I've seen live streams on Twitch of people covering this who have hundreds of viewers or 1,000. I think I saw it get up to 1,000 at one point. There are a few people on Twitch streaming the politics, literally streaming it. Then there's C-SPAN. C-SPAN is a national TV network. And anyone can watch it for free online. They have a viewer caller section, so every time there are breaks, viewers call in. I hear lots of call-ins in between Senate trials and in between so a lot of people are watching. A lot of people are watching. Interestingly enough, Fox News had a strategy to cover C-SPAN, at least on the first day of coverage. They had a strategy to cover it without covering it. So they did a picture-in-picture, so they had the coverage there. But you couldn't actually hear anything that was being said in the Senate chamber. They didn't have the audio going through, they just had the video.
And they were talking
and they were talking over it. That's how they were getting around the evidence being presented.
And the problem is, if you only see one news media outlet, you're not going to get the full picture.
Which is really annoying, because when I watch C-SPAN, they're just live coverage. That's really all they are. They're live coverage of Senate chamber, and they definitely have their viewer callers. You can definitely see they have their opinions, because when a Republican caller starts going on a rant that has nothing to do, he'll just hang up and be like, okay, next caller. when a Democrat starts going on a rant, he kind of when a more left-leaning person, not necessarily Democrat, when somebody who's more left-leaning, he'll let them speak more. I noticed. But he also, as I noticed from the call-ins, viewer call-ins, there was really only all of the call-ins had something consistent. The people calling in favor of Trump weren't talking about facts. The only thing they kept saying over and over and over again was the same thing Republican senators were saying over and over and over again. I'm not seeing anything new. I'm not seeing this. Democrats are just, this is a hoax trial. This is all this. They're just going lockstep. Everything being said, they're just jumping right in line with the Republican senators and saying, we're not seeing anything wrong with this. None of this has happened. But it's clear they haven't been paying attention to the trial. Because the person on C-SPAN, when it cuts away, and he will give clarifying information to things like, if you don't know, some sort of formality with the Senate, some rules of the Senate that we might not know, or whatever, he'll give clarifying statements. He will also, when viewers call in, he will ask them questions. So, like, if they say something interesting, like, oh, well, I was watching this, he will say, so what specific argument from the Democratic side did you see? From what specific argument from the prosecution stood out to you? And the left-leaning callers will go into the argument. Like, at least some of them, not all of them, some of them are like the other side, will go into an argument. They will make a valid conclusion from something that they clearly just watched. But every time, I watched many of those viewer calls, I didn't see a single Republican caller, not a single right-leaning conservative caller. That includes the independent line that leans conservative. Not a single one of them, when he asked them a question, well, what didn't you like about this? Or what did you like? Because obviously, they has to phrase the question differently. What didn't you like about it? Because they're calling it and complaining, What didn't you like about that argument? What have you seen to counteract that? What have you seen to... What makes you believe what you believe? Not a single one of them talks about the trial that they've supposedly been watching. It's all rambling from Fox News and other shit. They're not, like, they call into C-SPAN claiming to have just watched hours of the trial, and then when asked a question about the content of that they supposedly just watched, they can't mention it. Not a single one of them can say, this is what I didn't like about what he stated here. They can't bring up specific points. I'll admit, not all the Democratic callers can do that, but a majority of them can.
Is it because Fox News is covering this and they're saying, call in the C-SPAN and tell them what's right or something?
I assume somehow they're seeing it. Like, they're watching it, but they're not paying attention. They could be watching C-SPAN, but they're not actively paying attention. They're waiting for the senator's remarks, and then they just go off of what the senators were saying. That's all I can tell, because like I said, I didn't see a single Republican caller, a single caller that supported Trump make an argument about the trial, or based off of information in the trial. It was all outside information or just basic bullshit. Like, if you're not going to pay attention, don't call and give your opinion. Why do people feel compelled to do that?
Well, it's just like, why do people feel compelled to purposely be blind when evidence in front of them?
Yeah. So it's like, and there are a few times that, like, Republican callers will call in. They'll call in and they'll ask a question, right? For example, let me see if I can remember. It's like, they keep saying that Trump wanted a quid pro quo from this, or they keep saying that one thing, the caller called in, he said they kept saying that Zelensky was prepared for the call. Zelensky knew what to talk about. Zelensky was prepared for the call. It's like, and he didn't make an argument based off the information. He's going off of the information he supposedly saw, and then he asked a question. He says, well, where's the evidence to support that? And it's like, so clearly you didn't watch. You pulled something from the trial that Zelensky was prepared for the call, and then you asked a question that was answered in the trial 5 minutes before they made that statement. It's like the entire thing leading up to the statement, Zelensky is prepared for the call, was the evidence, the text messages from ambassador to ambassador to ambassador to Zelensky, was, this is what he needs to talk about on the call. Make sure he brings up the investigation so that he can get his White House meeting and the aid. Or so that he can get his White House meeting, right? The text messages were clearly there between ambassadors, one of them to Zelensky. It very clearly came from our side, went to their side, went to Zelensky. And he's like, well, where's the information to prove Zelensky knew about it before the call? Did you not watch the trial? Like, are you an idiot? Hello? they just showed it 5 minutes earlier.
I got a theory. Maybe all of them on that side are flat earths.
Yeah.
Too.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
It's entirely possible. Anti-vax, flat earth, whatever the fuck. I don't.
You probably still believe Obama is the new Antichrist.
And I get, it's like if I understand, I probably piss a lot of Republicans off that are for Trump. I probably piss every Trump supporter off. But at least when we started this podcast, I gave an argument for the President Council. I said they made a very convincing argument today. I stated the arguments that they went through. I stated why it's a very believable argument, but I looked past it, But at least I brought it up. At least I was willing to discuss it. They don't even bring up the evidence being presented in front of them.
Of course, because he can't fight evidence that is rock hard. I mean, you're driving down the road and a cop catches you speeding with his dash cam.
Yep.
How are you going to fight that?
Yeah, you can't.
You go to trial and stuff, but, I mean,
it's like
you can't fight the evidence when it's that hard.
How are you going to fight the fact that Donald Trump didn't know it was wrong when there was an email from the Department of Defense or the Department of Justice? I don't remember. There was an email from the department to Trump stating, we think there is a problem with you withholding this aid. We don't think you can withhold the aid. There's going to be legal backlash. There's going to be, it's like they very, very clearly stated their opinion. That entire email was put on a classified server that didn't need to be there. It was that classified server was not made for that type of email. That type of email is very much public record. Or is very much not deserving of the classification. Everyone agreed that. Even White House staff said, no, it was put there mistakenly. It was mistakenly put there. But then when it was released, like they got the entire redacted file, it was all blacked out. Then it was released the second time, and they got the unredacted file. They read the email, the entire unredacted email, and they're like, why was this in there? It's like you can't deny the fact that was put there for the sole purpose of they thought it would be damning to the president.
Yes. And it is. But, I mean, the president probably would not have got this much heat if he hasn't kept doing stuff illegally.
Yeah, if it's that's another argument on prosecution. They argued, it's like, what? It wouldn't be so bad, if Trump went through official channels, it's like, how can you trust somebody to do the right thing when they constantly do things the wrong way? Even if he's doing something correctly, he doesn't go through official channels. He goes through Rudy Giuliani. He goes through outside means, means outside the government to make these decisions or to act. His actions are outside official means. How can you approve of somebody doing things that way?
There's no controls on him.
If his subconscious, his decision, he thinks the only way he can get this done is to do it outside official channels, what does that say about him? If that's his first instinct is to go outside official channels, it's like, you can't trust that. You can't trust that.
Well, no, you can't. You cannot trust that. It's just like an old school pirate captain. I mean, you can't trust them. They'll say one thing and then shoot you or toss you overboard.
Right.
I mean, what was it? We nerfed the president after he did that drone strike.
Mm-hmm.
We took away power from him already.
Yep. He's been nerfed. Yeah, absolutely. They passed a House resolution, whatever the fuck.
Yeah, I mean, it's ridiculous. First time in history, I believe, right?
Yeah, well...
Well, from my understanding. I'm not a history major.
It's... I don't actually know all of what... I don't think I read that one. What all restrictions they put on him. But restrictions have been put on presidents in the past, not necessarily individual presidents, because this restriction isn't for specifically Donald Trump. It's for the seat of the president, isn't it? Or is it specifically for Donald Trump?
I don't know.
Because they've definitely restricted the seat of the president before. You know, it's like when even any type of decision that they have decided since the creation of the Constitution, if they've decided that the president does not have that power, that is a restriction on the president.
Yeah.
So, and they've definitely decided that there are powers the president doesn't have.
Yeah.
So, you know, he's not a good president. Stop supporting him.
Yeah. And, you know, hopefully he doesn't get reelected. Or hopefully he gets impeached.
Right.
But from my understanding, they're going to try to draw it out as long as they can.
I would assume so. I would assume the position in like president council that I can see the argument both ways. They would want to get it over with quickly because if they believe they can win easily, they want to get it over with as quick as possible. Because if they think all the Republican senators are gonna vote with them, they want to get it done with, get it out of the spotlight to get some of that off of Trump. You know. I don't think people are ever going to stop focusing on Trump as long as he's in the presidency, but you know they can dream. Because if the further it goes, I think the likelier it is that somebody might change their mind, or the likelier it is that irrefutable evidence and whatever, something could come out even more damning.
Oh, yeah.
So they obviously, President Council, want to get it done as quick as possible, I would assume. I don't see why they wouldn't. I mean, that's why they designed this resolution the way it was. The resolution initially had, you know, the witnesses, right? Witnesses and testimony is... They get prosecution statements, they get defense statements, they get questions, and then they decide on witnesses and documents. In the initial resolution, not only did they have 24 hours over the span of 2 days, which is like, that's not enough time. Like, you want them to go till 3 in the morning, till 1 in the morning, have their full 12 hours from 1 p.m. when it starts to 1 a.m. You think people are going to be watching at 1 a.m.? They didn't want people there for the closing statements, you know. It's like that's clearly damning. You can't, that's not reasonable. The other thing that I forgot earlier, the other thing that was changed, you know, because Republican senators brought to Mitch McConnell, they thought it wasn't fair, was initially all of the documents and witness testimony from the House's inquiry, the impeachment inquiry and the articles, all of that initially was not admissible, was not automatically visible in the trial. How are you going to have a trial where all of the evidence that the prosecution has gained, all of the evidence through the investigation? I understand not wanting to call other witnesses that the House could have possibly called if they went through the courts, but you know, that's somewhat reasonable. How are you going to argue that they're not allowed to bring any evidence? That doesn't make any sense whatsoever. That was the initial resolution. The initial resolution had no witnesses and no evidence. Now they have the previous witnesses and evidence, but they don't currently have new witnesses and evidence. There's still going to be a vote on that.
You know, the sad part is I don't see why they have to vote on the evidence there.
I don't...
It's like... It allows people to manipulate the courts to their bidding.
Yeah, it does.
Think about it. You get in trouble for something down here. I mean, it would be nice to omit the officer's evidence.
Right. I mean, in a regular trial, right, I assume the judge, like, obviously, this is not a regular trial. It's not a criminal trial. It's going through the Senate and the House. It's very different. Similar, but different. The senators are judge and jury. The person presiding over the case is Chief Justice Roberts, I believe. So, he's a Supreme Court justice.
Mm-hmm.
He's presiding over it. Why does it have to go to a simple majority? Why do the senators have to vote saying, yes, this stuff is vital to the case? Like, can't the justice of the Supreme Court be like, John Bolton, come testify?
But the problem is the majority is not equal. So if there's evidence that will definitely make sure Trump's guilty, the majority could vote it out so it never comes to light. And that's against that's against a fair trial.
That is what the Democrats in both the Senate and the House are afraid of. They are afraid that all of the votes will be 53 to 47. They are afraid that they won't vote with conscience. They just wanted the amendments in the beginning that Chuck Schumer and the minority leader, the amendments that he put forward were just to guarantee the witnesses and documents. They haven't listened to John Bolton yet. He hasn't testified. They haven't seen the documents from White House. None of those documents have been passed that they've asked for. There are 4 particular witnesses and some documents related to them. They haven't seen any of it. The prosecution doesn't know 100% that it'll be damning to the president. They don't know that. Like they said, they're very confident that it will, but they're not 100%. It's not democratic evidence. It's not their evidence. It's just evidence. There is no side to the evidence. It's just evidence.
So they're trying.
It's like they just wanted to guarantee that John Bolton and these other people immediately in contact with the president would have to take an oath and make a statement under oath. That's all they wanted. That's all. They just wanted it guaranteed that these people have to speak because the president stopped them from speaking in the House. Yeah. And the Republican senators are like, no, we'll vote on it later. But it's entirely possible that the later vote, the vote on, I assume, Wednesday. Wednesday and Thursday should be questions. Never mind, maybe Friday. I don't know. The vote after questions could entirely be 53 to 47.
Well, who are they questioning if they don't have these people?
They're not questioning anyone. Well, they're going to be questioning the counsel. They're going to be questioning the prosecution, the prosecutors, and president's counsel. They're not going to be questioning witnesses. They're going to be questioning the people presenting the case, which doesn't make sense. How are you going to question the people presenting the case and not question the witnesses themselves? It doesn't make sense.
It doesn't. I mean, it's like if you're questioning the president counsel, they're speaking for the president.
Yeah.
I mean, we should have the president there speaking.
Well, it's up to the defense whether or not the defendant speaks. That is true in any trial.
Yes.
And in this case, everyone very much understands president's probably not going to speak because president counsel and everyone in their right mind knows that would be damning to the president.
Oh, yeah.
Every sane person in this country knows that if Trump speaks at the trial, he will make it worse. Anyone that denies that is not paying attention to Trump, has not paid attention to Trump one bit. Because when Trump speaks, he argues against himself all the time. He's contradictory. He doesn't know how to... he essentially doesn't know how to tell the truth, is the way I see it.
Well, he does... he has characteristics of a psychopath because he doesn't care for anyone else. He doesn't care enough to remember his own daughter's name.
Yeah, he doesn't care enough to remember any of the things he said either. Like he'll be speaking and literally he'll say one thing and 30 seconds later he'll contradict himself. He doesn't remember his own arguments. So obviously putting him on the stand to defend himself, not a good idea.
And, maybe he actually is mentally ill, but if you follow his life, he's done these outlandish things. because he had enough money.
Yeah.
I mean,
absolutely. Yeah, but so I think chances of us actually seeing Trump speak is probably close to zero. As close to zero as it could possibly be, in my opinion. But it's entirely possible. Democratic senators have exclaimed when they come out, they're like, "Oh, well, we can't necessarily make comments on." So it's like I won't name names. I won't do this, but there are senators on the other side. It's like you can clearly see there are some Republican senators that are paying attention and focused. And there are some that are sitting there and, some of them walked out of the room like they were getting rowdy because it was taking too long. They just got up and left. Or they didn't, necessarily leave, but, they're not, people were standing behind their seats instead of sitting down. You're supposed to stay seated. They were just standing for the last 20 minutes. Just standing. Some of them, left early in some places, just left the room, whatever. It's like they're not, when facts are being presented, you shouldn't get up and leave the room. But, it's like, yeah, if you, really got to take a piss, sure, go take a piss, come back quickly, But, yeah, you should be paying attention to the evidence. That should be saved for breaks. And there are breaks. I understand there are few hours, and some of the senators might be getting older. I don't know, might not be able to hold their bladder. I don't know what it is. I don't know. I don't have arguments for
maybe
them.
they already know how they're going to vote, so there's no reason for them to be there.
It's like there are some press are allowed in the top, not a lot. Like C-SPAN, the coverage of the trial that is going to C-SPAN, 2 cameras. It's 2 cameras. C-SPAN asked to have control of the cameras. McConnell said no. They asked to put more cameras, possibly get some on the senators to see their reactions. McConnell said no. You have 2 cameras. You have a wide shot looking at the desk, essentially the chair, and you have a close-up of the podium, the speaking podium. That's it. You don't have any other angles. You can't see how the senators are responding. So all we have is testimony of people standing there saying, well, some of them were squirming in their chairs, some of them were paying attention, some of them weren't. It's like there were some Democratic senators were saying no, I saw a few of them during certain evidence. They definitely looked worried, or they were, it's got to be uneasy to sit there. But I don't know how true that is. I don't know that any of these, lifelong political senators and people just are sitting there squirming over evidence or sweating profusely. It's like they're probably just sitting there. And some of them are bored. Some of them don't care. Some of them might be paying attention. Hopefully the ones who are paying attention can make the right decision.
Well, we just need 4 people to pay attention.
Yeah. Need more than that to convict, but I want to look that up. I don't know what it is. I'm pretty sure it's a 2/3 majority to convict. But every other vote other than the conviction vote is a simple majority. So they would need 51. Whereas in order to convict, they need 66 or 67. Yeah. So, Senate trial.
So they only need 66 to convict.
Well, I mean, we can. I'm looking it up right now. Essentially, what? Yes, I am a robot. CAPTCHA.
Oh, I hate those.
To convict an accused, the concurrence of 2/3 of the senators present for at least one of the articles is required. So, in order to get a guilty vote, at least 2/3 need to vote for one of the articles for whatever guilty verdict they decide. However, for every other decision made that goes through senators voting is simple. It's a simple majority. It's 51. It's 51% instead of.
So 51 could impeach, but 66 or 67 is needed.
51 can vote for the extra witnesses and documents.
Okay.
67 is needed to convict, to get a guilty verdict.
But is there that extra, if they only get 51 votes, probably not going to get impeached. Because there's a lot of people just sitting there not caring about the evidence. Yeah. They're caring about this side.
Precisely.
Not the evidence.
Yeah.
And if that happens, I mean, our justice system's all messed up, and we need to look at fixing the shit.
That's the main argument. Is right now everyone is, a lot of people agree it's most likely going to be a not guilty verdict on both of the articles, even though obstruction of Congress is clearly provable. Like just all of the actions he took to stop the investigation, which you can't actively obstruct an investigation. You can't do that. That's illegal on every level.
It is. And if we can't charge a president with that, then our system doesn't work.
Yep.
It just shows if you have enough power or money, you can do what you want.
That's the way I see it. There's a lot to be said over, it's like, are they, these senators, they're voted in, they are supposed to represent us. Now, I will have to say on the bright side, 60% of this, I've seen polls for just Republican individuals, not Republican senators, individuals. 60% of Republicans want the extra witnesses and testimony. So they want to see it. Whether or not the senators are going to grant it, I at this point, I think there's a good chance they're going to vote, yeah, let's see the extra witnesses and documents. There's a good chance a few of them will say, yeah, let's see the extra evidence. But the chances that there's going to be 67 senators voting guilty, I don't think that's going to happen. I really don't see that happening.
We just have to have faith in our broken system to work.
I really wish it would.
We're screwed.
Yeah.
But I have faith that America is not going to re-elect Trump.
Even
though we see 2020 everywhere.
That's what I've been thinking. Even if he doesn't get impeached, I don't think he's going to get reelected. I think there's a chance, but I think a lot of people are upset and pissed off at Trump. And I think it's sparked a lot of outrage, and a lot more people are supporting the Democratic Party, particularly Bernie Sanders, who he's leading the polls, I believe, for the Democratic Party now. Even though, the Democratic news sites, the major news and media, don't want to report that he's in the lead. He's in the lead. A few of them have now put out polls. I think CNN put out a poll showing Bernie Sanders was in the lead in Iowa, or was it Iowa or was it the other one? One of the states in contention right now, Bernie Sanders was in the lead. I think he's in the lead in actually multiple, but I'm not sure. But, so it's like, I genuinely don't believe Trump will be reelected.
Me neither.
So, even if he doesn't get impeached, but that's 9 months until reelection. He can do a lot of damage in 9 months.
I know, and my question is, if he doesn't get reelected, are we able to go after him against?
I assume as soon as he leaves the office, well, it depends on whether or not his crimes, like I assume he's going to be charged with crimes when he comes out of office because he committed crimes. He will be indicted. He will be charged. But it's entirely possible that whoever gets into office next, if it's somebody that isn't Trump, if it's somebody like Biden, he could just be like, just don't bother, pardon him, don't do anything. Don't think that'll happen. Don't think that.
Yeah, I don't think we need to pardon him from what he's done.
I don't think so. But
it's multiple levels of treason.
It's also whether or not, like for example, I don't know if Robert Mueller still has the power to, like, indict. So I don't know if he's still. Because he came out of retirement to do that. I don't know if since he was in charge, he might still be able to indict the president once he leaves office. If the president wins the next election, the statute of limitations on some of the crimes he committed could be long gone when he gets out of office. Whether or not, now there's an argument being argued that if you're the sitting president, you can't be indicted. So if you're the sitting president and you can't be indicted, shouldn't the timeline for the statute of limitations on your crimes be paused? Shouldn't that time be paused? I think it should.
Yeah.
If it is not possible to indict you for a crime, then the statute of limitations should be paused while that's applicable to you. So as soon as he leaves office, I think he should be indicted, but also you got to remember these lawsuits cost a lot of money. Going through this, and Trump will absolutely, if he leaves office, he will 100% contest every single thing put against him with as much litigation in the courts as possible. And so it really comes down to who wants to spend that money, who wants to take the time doing that, and whether or not it's worth it. And he might not get indicted when he gets out of office. I hope he does, because he's clearly committed several crimes while being president.
I'm trying to look up the statutes of limitations.
Well, it depends on the crime.
Convictions on the non-applicable of statute of limitations to war crimes and crimes against humanity.
Well, that's not...
If
you look up...
there's no limitations on war crimes. Civil cases. Claims 2 years.
Yeah. 2 years, yeah. That's 2 years for civil cases. Yes, there are some other cases are 3 to 5. Some are 10. Some are, longer. It all depends on the very specific crimes and the crimes that they have evidence for, or that they have enough evidence to convict of, and whether or not those statute of limitations will have passed. And if they have passed, because he was president, he couldn't be indicted. Shouldn't they still be valid? So that's a decision people are going to have to make if somebody wants to go through the trouble of indicting Donald Trump when he leaves office. And I think he should absolutely be indicted when he leaves office.
Yes.
I think he should be indicted. I think he should be convicted. He's committed several crimes now.
And that's what impeachment's there for, is to get him into a spot we can indict him.
Yep.
That's the whole point of it.
Impeachment is to get him out of office, get him into a position where he can be charged with his crimes. The Senate can make their own charges, but then it's obviously going to have to go to courts for the actual criminal proceedings. But then if he does get impeached, if they convict him, who's taking up the mantle? Mike Pence? Is he any better? At least at the very least.
By the time he can do anything,
you could argue that Mike
over.
Pence is probably more competent than Donald Trump. He will probably not make it as obvious that he's breaking the law. So,
but he's got 9 months.
Yeah.
By the time it's done,
well, possibly 8 months, depending on how long it goes. How long the trial goes.
8, 7. By the time it's done, any new fill-in president won't really do too much unless there's an act of war.
Yeah. Then again, Mike Pence, I believe he has... But I assume Pence won't do anything in the leading months after... If Trump does get impeached, he won't do anything crazy because he will want to get reelected. He will want to get elected president, I would assume.
I would assume so too, but...
whether or not that'll be possible... A lot of people who are vice presidents, they're vice presidents because they didn't get the presidency. They wanted the presidency, and they had to go with their party's leader or whatever. They had to step down from their presidency run to be vice president to somebody else. Because
they're like, Donald, you're not going to make it, but Josh is. You're going to be his vice president. How about that?
Yep, no. The president is the executive, commander in chief over the executive branch, but the vice president is more congressional, right? He's more the relations between the president and Congress, and not necessarily strictly executive branch, right?
I don't think that's fully true.
I don't think it's fully true, but I don't know. I'm not 100% how that relationship works. I'm going to be honest, I don't really see a whole lot regarding vice presidents. Most of the information I've gathered, and I know about politics, it's like a lot of stuff just, you see a lot on the president. I don't know that I've usually see very much on vice presidents. They don't get brought up as much, but I assume they have, if they're second in command to the president, they have to have a lot of power. How come they're not talked about as much, Why, Josh? Why? Got any answers for me?
I'm trying to look some of those up.
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty sure the vice president's also there to do anything to help the president.
Well, yeah, obviously, like you're supposed to support the president, but I'm pretty sure the vice president has not necessarily more authority over, not definitely not authority. Authority is not the right word, but they have more interaction with Congress, I believe. I think that's the only thing I'm trying to say is they interact with Congress more than the president.
The vice president is also an officer in the legislative
branch.
You've been talking too much. My tongue's not working. As president of the Senate.
Every time I pause, you don't speak up, Josh.
In the capacity, the vice president is empowered to preside over the Senate.
The Senate.
Deliberate, but may not vote except to cast tie-breaking votes.
Which normally, right? Like I said, Chief Justice Roberts is presiding over the trial. That's where I remembered this from. Normally, Vice President would have a say, would be in charge of the trial or be in charge of impeachments, except when it's impeachment of President, I believe.
Because that's a conflict.
Because a conflict of interest.
Wow.
Yeah. If you can't have the vice president presiding over the president's impeachment, but if it was any other government official impeachment, I think the vice president would be presiding over the trial.
Yes.
But because it's President, Chief Justice Roberts presides over the trial.
And that makes perfect sense on that.
Yeah. So yeah, but there's I don't know. I've stated my opinion. I think he should be impeached. I've seen the defenses, or I've seen the prosecutions. I'm going to watch all the defenses arguments. Like I said, we only saw 3 hours today, so I understand. It looked like a they know what they're doing. It looks like they're gonna present a case, at least some kind of case for the president. They said they're not gonna take the full 24 hours, but I'm gonna watch it. I'm going to try and see. I'm going to try not to have a biased opinion, although I already have one.
Well,
but, it's like all I can do is watch it and agree or disagree. But at the very least, I won't be one of those Republican callers calling in and not bringing up any of the evidence presented forth,
Well, you've been watching this shit.
I've been watching all of it.
And I don't consider myself biased. I mean, I'm independent, but I definitely see the facts of what's happened. And that just because you side with the facts doesn't mean you're biased.
Yeah.
Bias would be you see the facts and then you're like, we're not going to worry about that.
Yeah. But, yeah. It's a lot to take in. It's a lot to think about. But also when we have a president that's in the media as much as our president today, it's kind of hard not to be biased. It's kind of hard, you see his actions on a daily basis, and you as a human being, you have to judge those actions. If you see them, you're going to judge them. Anybody that says they're not judgmental is lying. Whether or not they act on those judgments is up to them. But in their mind, when they see something, everyone is going to have their judgment. And so I already have my judgment of President Trump. I don't like him. I think he's making invalid decisions, wrong decisions. He's not acting in our national interest, in the interest of the people. And so I would like to see him impeached. But that being said, the evidence I've seen from the prosecution has been good evidence. Yes, it's all technically, hearsay or starts with a C. Whatever evidence, I forget, circumstantial evidence.
Okay.
It's all technically circumstantial, but there are emails and text messages in writing from ambassador to ambassador, from, Mick Mulvaney, from all of these people. There is written evidence, time-stamped, dated evidence. That's the evidence that I'm basing my opinion off of. Trump should be impeached. He did the things he's accused of, especially obstruction of Congress. If you want to argue he wasn't trying to shake down the President Zelensky, if you want to argue that, you can. There's possibly a few avenues that you could possibly spin it to say to where it's no longer beyond a reasonable doubt, you know. But obstruction of Congress, 100% is beyond a reasonable doubt. Without a doubt, Article 2 should be a guilty vote every time with the evidence that has been presented.
And, before we close, there's one thing I wanted to say. If it was any other person, it would have been done. It would have been over.
Yeah.
But also we look at Trump's done. It's not just that one thing. And if you wonder if Trump's guilty, you got to look at the other things he's did.
Yeah.
And how he broke or changed laws to suit himself.
Or just how he...
Or ignore the laws.
How his thought process works to get him to the actions that he's taking. His thought process is clearly not in the interest of the nation.
Yes, exactly.
And so.
The podcast is getting a little long, so I'm going to start ending it right now. I mean, it was kind of excited to listen because Dalton is willing to sit there and watch all this. And, I got to work.
Anyway, thanks for watching our podcast. I'm Dalton.
I'm Josh.
Goodbye.